Let's move on to a different name or two in the secondary. One near and dear to my heart, Stephon Gilmore, and then the other in the same division in Xavien Howard. Their names have been circling a little bit in trade talks, some rumors going around. So it's obvious the Patriots and Gilmore haven't really come to any middle ground in terms of getting him a new deal. He wants to be paid what he's worth. I'm not necessarily sure what he's worth at this point at 31 years old, coming off of a torn quad.
I don't think anybody knows.
It's more than the $7 million or 7 point whatever $million he's due to be making. I know that much, but I don't know if it's necessarily as much as he thinks. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And then Xavien Howard, they're just in my opinion, two of the best at what they do.
They're great. Both of them.
And the fact that they're in the same division is kind of
as a Jet fan, I hope they both go.
I was going to say, it makes it nice for you guys to talk about this because the sooner you guys can get them out of here, the better.
Yes.
But what should each team do? What should the Dolphins do when it comes to Howard? What should the Pats do when it comes to Gilmore? Should one of them be traded? Should both of them be traded? What would you trade them for? Give me the whole rundown because it's kind of important. And we're 2 weeks away from training camp. This is kind of crunch time right now. So
yeah, it's an interesting thing. And Brie, like with Gilmore, he's always been so interesting to me because prior to this year when the Pats went crazy in free agency, when they went out and they signed Gilmore right off the bat to a huge deal, I was like, whoa, for this guy, he was solid in Buffalo, but you didn't think of him as, this great lockdown corner, which he became in New England. So, Belichick loves this guy. He went out, their pro free agency scouting department with the Pats. They targeted this guy. They loved him. They paid him. He's been worth all of that and more with the Pats. And even now, like if somebody would have gone through because Gilmore makes this public, and a lot of Pats don't do that.
Right.
Belichick loves this guy, which to me, kind of leads me down the road to think they're going to find a way to keep him because Belichick clearly loves him. Because if he didn't, A, he wouldn't have been here and they wouldn't have paid him in the first place. And B, now going public on the other side of 30, dealing with a lower leg injury for a corner, he probably would have moved on from him at this point, traded him for a 2, washed his hands and been done. Clearly, Belichick loves this guy. Clearly, the Pats love this guy. He makes the defense work. When he's on the field, you can, it's almost like Revis light. He's not as good as Revis in his prime, but when Revis came from the Jets, and they won that Super Bowl with the Pats, he played amazing that year. And Gilmore has kind of come in after Revis and has done the same thing. They haven't had the team success as much, but Gilmore is, if not the best cover corner in football, he's one of the best. And Xavien Howard is a guy who's just a playmaker, led the league in interceptions. It felt like he was having 2 picks a week last year at a point, and a bunch of them were from Sam Darnold and whoever was that corpse behind the Jets offensive line playing quarterback. So you have kind of 2 different corners. One guy who's just your pure lockdown, another guy who just makes plays back there. I'd love to see both of them out of the division. It seems like both of them have had, their names in trade rumors the past 2-3 years. If I was a team, I don't think the Gilmore thing is going to end up in a trade. I think eventually he'll come back. They'll rework
What kind of
his
quote
deal.
is that?
Yeah, the best. It's like,
what
no,
do
he's
you get a
not.
team out of a hat? He's the best fit for.
Why the Cardinals? Can people stop overrating the Cardinals?
Is that some end all be all quote or something? Is he working for somebody? That's a weird quote. You could literally put a million teams in there and it would make sense.
Yeah, why the Cardinals of all teams?
I know.
But I could see the Dolphins just being fed up. They also have they have Noah Igbenogany, who they drafted in the first round. They have Byron Jones, who they paid through the roof. So I could see them moving on from Howard more than I could see, even though Howard's younger and he's probably got a longer way to go. Well, he definitely does than Gilmore. I could see them just being fed up and being able to move him because they have that cornerback depth in Miami. But I don't, especially with less than 2 weeks to camp, you got to figure out a way to keep both of these guys. The way the game is played now, you need these corners and you need a lot of them. And to move on from either of these guys, it's tough. But I think Belichick finds a way to keep Gilmore here.
I agree.
My question for you guys is this, and I'm going to propose this out because haven't really been able to make a strategic analysis on this. Do you think that you need great corners to win a championship or to even contend? Something about this whole cornerback market's telling me that you really don't. I don't know. I have a feeling that
good question.
It's right now it's looked at as a very important position, but I really think it's a little bit overrated in terms of value to a team. And I think investing that obviously in your defensive line and offensive line, if you were to invest money into a big corner, I'd be more prone to say don't put that money into a big time corner. Don't pay Gilmore this big money. Let him walk or get some assets on the market. But I don't know. I flip back and forth. It's just something interesting to think.
I'm with you, Frank. And do you remember back in 2009 before the Jets traded for Cromartie, when Revis had the year of no one ever had a better year individually than Revis had in 2009. He had that list of receivers he shut down.
Best year I've ever seen from any player at their position.
Yes, and you're talking about the best ever at that one season. All other teams had to do was throw to the other side. So you're really only as good as your other corner, and we talked about this with the offensive line, when I talked about how much I like the move for Morgan Moses because you have a Becton on one side. If your right tackle is garbage and your opposite corner is garbage, teams now, the game plans are so specific to the team that they're playing. You just target the other corner and you throw away from these guys.
Or you target the middle of the field. You target
so you can go around. So I think it's like, if you ask me and I had a team, I'm investing in the front, I'm getting pressure on, from your edge or your interior, and I'm having two solid corners and I'm playing a little bit off. I'm not going to play any hard man cover because these guys now you can move so many of them inside and line them up in different places. So to have a lockdown corner and a terrible corner on the other side kind of defeats the purpose. You could do so many different things. So if you have one of these guys like a Gilmore and a Jair Alexander and a Xavien Howard, you better then go out and get another really good corner because then they're just going to go the opposite way. So it's a great, and I'm sure defenses and offensive coaches and team philosophy talk about this year after year, and it's a great conversation to have. But for me, I'm investing in the front and I'm putting as much pressure and making these quarterbacks as uncomfortable as possible and getting them off their spot rather than investing so heavy on the outside of corner.
Well, just a quick tidbit, and then I'll let Bree jump in and get us the next segment because we'll talk all night about this, Nick.
Yeah,
I do think I agree with exactly what you just said. I think if you have a really stout defense, adding somebody like Xavien Howard or Gilmore's fantastic because it's tough to know where you're going to go with the ball, and you can't just say I'm going to go to one side or the middle of the field when it's stacked in the middle of the field or the other side. For example, when the Packers brought in Charles Woodson, their defense was awesome at that time. Bringing in Woodson, you bring it to another level. But when you take a guy like Nnamdi Asomugha and you put him on a defense that was unproven and really had no one really out there, then you take a guy like that and they're terrible because teams are moving away. They get discouraged and things kind of move on. But yeah, that's a great.
That's why I was so shocked when they signed Gilmore that year. I remember being stunned that they paid this guy. I was like, that is so not like Belichick. And I was like,
Belichick really was right. One of his best signings.
That's why it stands out in my mind, that signing, probably because he turned into the best corner. But I was like, this is so un-Belichick because Belichick never had obviously he had Ty Law, but he drafted him. He never spent on corners to come in. Bree, they have these little dudes who come in on 1 year and just, look at Malcolm Butler. You developed him and kicked him out. Didn't know he was any good. He's been okay everywhere he went. The Titans, he was solid, but he's never been any better than he was.
No.
Yeah, so I'm more of probably because I've seen Belichick in our division do this year after year. It's great to have a difference maker back there on the back end of your defense, but I don't think it makes your defense run. Look at the Chiefs. They don't have any corners. They have Tyrann Mathieu, running around back there is kind of bringing the energy. He hits, he makes big plays. It's good to have one guy back there at least to do kind of be the star of the show back there.
My only thing with Frankie's point is, and just specifically talking in terms of Stephon Gilmore, because I think this Patriots defense can be really good, whether they retain him or not. Obviously, I'd want them to. I want him to stay. I want him to get paid. I'm thinking it's going to be somewhere between 9.5 and 10. just because of he's coming off this injury. And he's north of 30. So how much longer does he have left? What, 5 years?
Probably got
6 years?
2-3 great years out of him.
Right.
So
my thing with this is the Patriots, last time I checked, this could have changed after Mac Jones signed his deal. They have about $13 million in cap space left. Splash, if you could check my math on that one. It would be capable of happening. I think it should happen. I think it will happen. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen before camp starts. I think it's going to happen probably around August, early mid-August.
Do you see this? So look at these figures here. Stephon's a little bit underpaid. I mean, he's only making, I think, $7 million.
He's in a down year of his contract. So, 2 years ago, he probably made $14 million, that year. But he's just on the lower end. And guys, that's what Xavien Howard's pissed about. Someone beat him to the market again, So that's why these guys, they sign deals like this. And yeah, he's only making 7 this year, but 2 years ago he probably made 14 or 11 or whatever it may be. So he's on the back end of the contract where the teams a lot of times front load a lot of money. They're in a different position financially. So it's not that he made $7 million every year of his career. Like then he'd be disgustingly overpaid and he'd have a case for it. But they've already paid him, and he played to that level, to his credit, obviously. So now he just wants to go back and say, hey, I played up to that 13-14 million I made every year. Give it to me again because I'm still playing at this level.
Dude, the Patriots will be fine.
That's what happened last year when they restructured his deal to make it more front loaded. It was like an extra $3 million, $4 million on a signing bonus or something. That's why this number is so low on his cap hit.
Maybe they want to see what he looks like in camp. See how that quad is, and if he's healthy and he's up,
if he shows up,
they'll pay him.